What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It's time for live full-time reaction to Rangers 2, Celtic 0 at Ibrox. Join me today are Kenny and Martin. Get your questions and your comments in the live chat box below. We'll try and pick out any good ones as we go through. As ever with these games, I'm sure there's a lot that you want to say. We'll try and pick out some good ones as we go through. Kenny, where do you start with that? I'm looking at my notes here. Most of them are just incoherent ramblings, to be honest. Just a disaster in 90 minutes.
Yeah, and I think if after all we've been through this season, the one thing that we would need to win a game like that is desire and belief from the players that have let us down all campaign. And I naively, optimistically thought it's the last meaningful game for Edward, for Christie, for Aya, who are all going to leave. It's the last meaningful game for Scott Brown, who's going to retire. I thought they'd go at them. I thought we'd have a bit of thunder and we play with a bit of desire. And if we get beat, at least we go off the park with our heads held high, and we can draw a line under an era, with a bit of pride. But it was so obvious from early on that wasn't the case, and I was amazed by it. The pressing wasn't there. I don't think Rangers were performing. It was almost like Rangers were playing within themselves in the first half. The game was scrappy. We were playing in patches. The difference being, when we played with a bit of quality and got into the last third, they just dropped into a shape and they have belief in each other and they know how they're playing and they could snuff us out. And it would take quality to break them down. When they broke forward against us, it's kamikaze stuff. Laxalt's all over the place. They're only a goal or two, a pass or two away from being in on goal. And we're a broken side. That was never going to go away today under the management of Kennedy. I didn't believe, but I think we needed to go with a bit more belief and a bit more passion and desire, and it wasn't there, and that's the most galling thing. The second thing I think that done was the system. We were forced back into that system. Okay, it might sound like sour grapes because it's only one player and one injury, and can you pin a defeat on that? When Forrest went off against Livingston, my heart sank because we have no substitute. We don't even have an inferior right winger that allows us to hold that shape, and that's a failing of the board. It was glaringly obviously we needed to invest in a right winger, a substitute right winger in the summer. We never did it. Okay, we've lost Frimpong in unexpected circumstances, but Frimpong was competing for right back. We went on a season with one right winger, with an injury-prone right winger. Forrest's injury record is not strong. We took that risk, and it's bumped us today, and it's knocked us out of the Scottish Cup. It doesn't just affect Forrest's position. Christie comes in, he doesn't know how to play. It affects left back. Laxalt wouldn't have been playing if Forrest was playing, because we'd have went with more solidity at the back. We wouldn't have been as reliant on the forward play from our fullbacks had we not been playing with the diamond. Laxalt was a nightmare, and he gets taken off. So it affected us all over the park. I think a combination of those two things has done us. And we had so many chances in that second half. We could have scored 5 goals in that second half. I was unfortunately can remember the years of Andy Gorham, and unfortunately this is a season like that where unless you really take your chances, it feels almost impossible to get past their goalkeeper. But it was really the lack of heart and belief. I can take a defeat at Ibrox after the season we've had, but it's a hard one to swallow when, I don't think in a France under 21 shirt Edward puts in that shift. I don't.
Aye, you used a phrase there, Kenny, that this is a broken side. And Martin, I think that about sums it up for me. This is a broken Celtic team. There's nothing left in that team from where it was 18 months to 2 years ago. It doesn't even have the basics. It doesn't even have the basic belief and intensity that you need in these games. We just look devoid of creativity, devoid of organisation at times, as Kenny says. I think Rangers again won the game today, coasting really. That they didn't need to play well. They didn't need to play in top gear. Anytime they really attacked, they looked like they might score because, I mean, they were just running by us left, right, and centre. We like Laxalt, Brown, Kenny, like just non-stop. Like we couldn't get a foot in. We couldn't prevent them for cutting through us at times, and it's just from where it was 2 years ago. This team is just non-existent.
Yeah, it's really scary. I mean, the attitude of the players first and foremost. Because the question I'd ask anybody, and John Kennedy's been mocked this week for saying we're the better team. So forget who's the better team of the two teams right now. But that's a team that, on paper, when you look at the amount of money that's been spent on it, when you look at what they've achieved in the past, because this is the same team that's achieved trebles, quadruple trebles. So you ask yourself, what's wrong? Neil Lennon got the blame, and I understand why that was the case. He lost the dressing room, and him and the players were not getting on at all. But John Kennedy should have went at the same time, because John Kennedy was a big part of that. And to think that John Kennedy was going to get the best out of the players as opposed to Neil Lennon, I was scratching my head at the time, and I'm still scratching my head. And yet we've had the opportunity to bring in a manager, and yes, the last 16 we're hoping for a different game and an easier round and get a bit more time to bring a manager in, but we failed to do that as well. I'm not sure if you're going to come to that or not, Paul, but it's a combination of things, because core capability in that team, we should be performing at a much higher level. So part of that's confidence, part of it's tactics. I think in any team, if you've got one position that's weak, then the opposition will play in it. In my opinion, I would take it a stage further than Kenny. Kenny's 1,000,000% spot on about the weakness and the absence of Forrest. Forrest, as it so happens, doesn't have his best games against Rangers, but he's a key part of the team. But the whole left-hand side and the whole right-hand side is a mess. It's a shambles. We don't have a Paddy Roberts. We don't have Scott Sinclair. We don't have Lustig. We don't have Tierney. We don't even have a Johnny Hayes. We are all over the place on both sides of the pitch. And at times in the earlier part of the season, one side of the pitch, what Kenny talked about Frimpong, just as an example, it felt like there was something going on somewhere in the wide areas, but now there's absolutely zero, nothing. And that's the greatest concern. Talk about diamonds all you want. Do you know what I would describe it as? I'd describe it as a triangle. It's not a diamond, because there's nothing up the wings. There's nothing up the two wings. There's nothing defensively, because they're not good enough, the two of them. And there's nothing in front of them either. And that's where the two guys that are average players at the back, they look even worse, because there's nothing in front of them. And there's too many guys wanting to play number 10. They just cut inside continuously. Yeah. So that's been our Achilles heel the whole season, and it was again today. That there's no width, and then the guys at the left back and the right back look even dafter than they would do normally.
I think the fullbacks, as you touched on there, were so limited in that area. I mean, John Joe Kenny must be one of the most limited Celtic players I think I've ever seen. Yeah. He can't carry the ball forward. He's always hesitant to pass the ball forward. He's not a good crosser of the ball. He doesn't strike me as a great defender. He goes with his wrong foot for the second goal today. If he goes with his left foot, he's got a chance of clearing it. He goes with his right foot and smashes it past Scott Bain. You've got Laxalt on the other side, who I said before, like, players were just getting ran past left, right and centre, and Aribo went by him time and time and time again, and it just seemed like there was a lack of intensity from him. He wasn't close enough, and then when he was close enough, he was just kind of half-arsing it. And the thing, Gordon Strachan said this at half-time, actually, Kenny, and I thought it was a good point. He talked about explosive energy. Rangers have got explosive energy, and Celtic don't. I think he said very little. We don't have any. We don't have any explosive energy in that team. Ryan Kent today burst past Scott Brown 3 or 4 times. Scott Brown looked about 70-year-old playing in the middle of the park. We don't have any of that. Where are the players in our team that are giving us something different, who have got an edge, who can go past somebody, create a chance, open up Rangers, who you said, who were happy when we have the ball to sit in their shape? We just don't seem to have any of that, and we can come to the chances in the second half in more detail, but I think that's mental. That's a mental block as much as anything else. But the team is so limited, and you can talk about the range of factors that are at play in that, but like, it could be recruitment, it can be coaching, but we're just miles off it in so many positions.
Yeah, and I'd be lying if I was to sit here and pretend I could give you a good answer to that, Paul, because I can't. I still, even having watched every game this season, I still can't work out why they're underperforming all over the park. Because in my heart of hearts, I think Moya Yunusi is a far inferior player to Ryan Kent. I don't. Is Edouard a far inferior player to Morelos? He's not. He's done that over a course of 4 years. So why all of a sudden are they performing in a way that's showing us up when they're every bit as good a player as them historically? I think we've got one. I think we've got Turnbull, right? We've probably been criticised on this panel for being negative all season. It's been impossible not to be, having watched it unfold. So let's talk about a positive. I thought he was pretty good in that first half. He's not really shown up in these Celtic Rangers games to date, but he was taking responsibility. He was playing with intelligence. He was playing with a bit of passion, and he was playing with a bit of quality. He's the only one that I believe that we have that we can throw some responsibility on next season and say that he's at the level But everyone else, it's fortunate now, actually. It's a bit perverse. This time last season, we're thinking all of our players' contracts are running down. Our loans are going to go. Where does that leave us? I'm glad the loans are going. I'm glad that Eddie's contract's running down. His head's gone. We need a refresh. Hopefully, we're going to see a big clear out. Usually after these types of defeats, you're thinking, where does that leave us going forward? How are these players going to get us going? I'm not going to be here. 2 or 3 of those starting 11 are going to start the start of next season. No one else will. So if there's a small solace in it, it's the fact that we are going to go under wholesale change, and at least we'll have the excitement of a new manager and someone who can build it. And it's risky. Don't get me wrong, that's risky and it's scary because it could go wrong again. But at least we've got that in front of us. I can't answer your question, Paul. I don't know why we watched another 90 minutes when everything was laid bare on the line. The last cup we had to play for, the last meaningful game for players that have given their all for years, and they gave us nothing. I don't understand it. I think it's psychological as much as anything else. And Martin's right. John Kennedy was never going to get us out of a hole here. Maybe gave us a bit of false belief once we beat Falkirk and Livingston, but John Kennedy, we should be capable of beating those sides. Clearly, he's not the man to take us forward.
Aye, absolutely. I want to bring up the super chat for a couple of minutes ago. They're talking about half the squad. You happily see half the squad out the door. Honestly, I'm struggling to come up with a handful of players that I would nailed on and say, let's keep him. Like, I don't see it, Martin. And half of these players, Kenny's right, the guys who are here on loan, or Edward and Christie, like these guys checked out months ago. And you see that today when it comes to the crunch, because when you play against Falkirk and Livingston, you can coast, you can half-arse it, and sometimes you'll win. When you come into these games, you need to have a desire, an intensity, and you need to be mentally strong. And we come to the chances in the second half. I mean, you just cannot believe that those 2 chances, one for Edward with the open goal, it's embarrassing that the finish that he tries to do is absolutely embarrassing. I cannot believe he's tried to flick that with the outside of his foot instead of finishing it like any footballer in the world would have with his instep and try to hit it down into the ground. And then less than 2 minutes later, he plays in El Yunusi, and you think it's got to be a goal, and he can't even control it. He can't even control it in front of Alan McGregor. I mean, it's mentally, this team is shot.
El Yunusi should have hit that first time, and a confident player would. And despite the fact he scored I think 4 in the last 3 games, El Yunusi, so that's probably the one player on the team who is playing with a bit of confidence and still couldn't take a chance with nobody near him. Keeper was nowhere near him, no defenders near him. He had 2 or 3 yards of space. And then Eddie, as you say, trying to score the fancy goal. That's somebody that couldn't care less. Half those strips will not need washed tonight. That's the point Kenny made earlier on. So you've got the players' approach to the game, which was deplorable. You've got the lack of tactical expertise in John Kennedy. He's not the answer there. That would just be implementing what Neil Lennon did before. You've got the players missing in certain positions. And it was a combination of a load of things. I can't help but think if a decent manager came in, we might have seen a different result today, and either tactically or getting those players up for a game. To your point around who's going to be there, Kenny, so first and foremost, before you ask who wants to go and who would we like to keep, I think the important thing is if you assume that Eddie's going to leave, we've nobody up top at all, really, because Kamala, Ayeti, Griffiths, all those guys, they've hardly played, and that speaks volumes, and are they good enough anyway? Kamala's situation's obviously changed. But if you assume Eddie's going to disappear, you've no striker, right? And you need a goalkeeper. We need 4 players to help us on the wings. So all of a sudden, you're talking about 7 players before you even get started. And that's what we need. Never mind who wants to stay and who wants to go. 7 players, goalkeeper, 4 on the wings and 2 up front. And what we've probably got beyond that is far too many players who want to play in the centre of the park. We've said it millions of times on this panel. We've got loads that want to play cut inside and play in the number 10 role. But if you ask me who I would keep, Turnbull, obviously. El Yunusi, probably up at the right price. Forrest, yes. Rodgick, I would keep him. McGregor, although he hasn't been playing well at all recently, but I think most
played with his shoes tied together today.
It's terrible today. Really, really bad. And he has been.
He cost the first goal, McGregor.
Terrible. Sorrow you would keep, Julian you would keep, and Welsh, I'm not convinced yet, but he's a young lad. Do we give him time to improve? He will make mistakes. He's young and raw and inexperienced, but even at that, and I've listed a few names, you're lucky to get, 2, 4, 6, 8 players out of that. You've not got enough for a starting 11, which is not a healthy position to be in. So, where do we go from here? And many of those guys want to stay, but we assume Christie and Eddie are off it.
Aye, it's it is gross mismanagement in terms of the squad, in terms of recruitment, that we found ourselves in this position. And there's so many layers to it. You talk about January, Kenny, and not bringing in a right winger, not doing it in the summer when we thought we needed one for backup to Forrest, but then Forrest is out for months and we still don't go and do it in January. There's so many decisions in the last couple of years that the board have made that have brought the team to this position. I said on Twitter at halftime that the team is just disintegrated for where it was, and that's not an accident. That didn't just accidentally happen. That happened as a direct result of decisions that were taken at boardroom level, and there's absolutely no getting away from it. I know we've talked about it to death all season, but that's the reality where we're at. We've got a massive rebuild ahead. The squad, as you've just ran through there, Martin, where do you even start? I mean, you could probably keep 4 or 5 players, but again, you come back to the first goal today, Kenny, with McGregor, overruns it in the middle of the park. Kent goes by Brown, and then El Yunusi at one stage is just like kind of jogging out towards Aribo. He cuts inside. I don't know what Ayer's doing with the block. I don't know what Baines. I think Baines too busy thinking I should claim for offside here to even bother trying to save it. And the second goal we've kind of touched on already again with Kenny's position and not going with his right foot, or going with his right foot instead of his left foot. Lacks out and that goal as well. And then you come to the second half, we've talked about the chances. We end up getting a penalty. Like a penalty, a free shot for 12 yards, and you just knew that Edward was going to miss it.
Yeah. It's a psychological problem. I mean, we've been slagging off the fullbacks there. Laxalt was in a World Cup Team of the Year. AC Milan had enough confidence to spend €15 million on him. Yeah, he looks like an amateur in the Scottish League. John Joe Kenny played 38 games in the Bundesliga last season. Before he came to us, everyone are probably looking for 10 million plus. He comes here and he just looks awful. That's not a coincidence. It's as a result of a psychology that when we walk into the dressing room, they probably get a fright and think, I've joined a bunch of disillusioned players. And I don't think it's one specific reason. It was obviously Neil Lennon was the single biggest reason in retrospect. But I think letting people's contracts run down to 1 year and hoping or assuming that they're going to give out their all for you, despite that happening, in retrospect, they should have sold Eddie. They should have sold Ayer. They should have sold Christie. They should have reinvested all of that money in new players that believed this season that they wanted to play for us, that they were at the start of a 4-year contract with desire. We took the decision not to. We thought on balance it was better to keep them. It's not an easy decision. It was a grossly wrong decision, though. And then we weren't agile enough towards the end of the year to get rid of Lennon when we saw it all unravel. I don't think it would have taken that much to at least give Rangers a fright. You could have, I don't know, you could have brought in Martin O'Neill, Gordon Strachan, but the overall ground stuff we brought for months, talked about for months, I don't know. But they failed. They left it until the campaign was completely stone dead to take any action. And I think it's just a common, smaller things. Shane Duffy being a nightmare, Fraser Foster not re-signing, Julian getting injured, Forrest getting injured. You could write a book about it and everything's going against us. COVID, you mentioned COVID in that list. Everything's going against us. But it's been mishandled by the board grossly. And it was refreshing to see a new chief executive in the stand today. He's done nothing. We don't know anything about him. But a young person with a more progressive outlook who is good in communications. He comes from rugby, which is a bit of a concern. But at least it's a fresh face and a fresh momentum. And I think we are at least going to be hopefully excited by a new project. We just need to see out these horrible last 3 or 4 games. And then the fan base can hopefully get excited about new players coming in and going forward and trying to recover the culture of the club because it's lost. I'm not watching Celtic there. It's lost.
No, we haven't been watching Celtic, the real Celtic, for a long time. I remember back when Ferencváros beat us in August, Martin and Dermot Desmond done an interview, I think, with Athletic shortly after that, and they talked about how it's all just psychology. So we've sent a psychologist in. We've just talked about the state psychologically of this Celtic team. I don't know what work that psychologist has done. I certainly wouldn't be putting on my CV if I was a psychologist that I was responsible for helping the Celtic team in 2020, 2021 anyway. I want to bring in a comment before we round up. Dominic Mackay needs to address the supporters tomorrow, even if it's not a managerial appointment. We need something about the direction we're going. Gutless today from now play the players who will be here next season. As we've discussed, who will be here next season, we don't really know. But Martin, I don't know if Dominic Mackay will address the supporters tomorrow. I think he's effectively shadowing Peter Lawwell for a couple of months before he officially becomes the chief executive on the 1st of July. But it'd be nice to hear something from the club, direct, coherent plan about what is going to happen in the next couple of months and how the club's going to move forward for this.
I think they have to, and again, we've said this a few times, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope the fans flock to buy season tickets. But certainly there's somebody who's involved in running a supporters bus that there will be a lot of fans who are disillusioned as well. There'll be some that are desperate to get back and regain the title, but there'll be others for loads and loads of reasons. There'll be people who are not in a strong position financially. There'll be folk that are totally disillusioned. So as Kenny was talking about there, we've had a number of opportunities to try and appease the fans, and Lennon was one of the things. And then, replacing him, not just putting John Kennedy in charge. Win the Scottish Cup for me would have been one of them, to finish the season on a high, and we failed to do that. So it's failure after failure after failure. So I think they'll need to come out with something positive, and I think the managerial appointment is the next big thing, really, isn't it? That's the next big thing that would potentially excite the fans, and if Eddie Howe does choose to come to get that deal done now, I think there's now more pressure on the club to do that. Had we won today, that might allow that problem to go away for a few weeks, and we could focus on winning the next round and looking forward to a semi-final and a final and start talking about where we're going to get some form of attendance at the game. But now everybody's, and the next thing will be the renewal letters coming out. And as I say, I hope I'm wrong. I hope everybody renews their tickets and we don't have that headache, because we could do without it. The club will need the backing from the fans to go and invest in the market. And I wonder whether that's one of the reasons Howe's not signed on the dotted line yet, because he hasn't given any assurances about the how much budget's going to be made available to him. So yeah, I think we need some announcement, whether it's from the new man coming in or whether it just happens with the existing guys in charge and we get the appointment done with the manager, because that's really all that's left, isn't it? That's the next big thing. That'll hopefully keep us happy and finish the season with something. I mean, that's the first time since 2009 we've won nothing in a season. And you go way back to Rangers winning the treble, or stupidly watched the cup final this morning, way back in 98, 99 when they won that treble. So if you think about what's happened thereafter, I think there's only been 2 years we've won nothing over a 22-year period. And here we are after that, dominance during the last 4 years, 21 consecutive cup games, everything that came with that, and that Scottish Cup. I mean, 5 years ago yesterday since the last time we lost a Scottish Cup game. That's how dominant it's been. And then here we are, winning absolutely nothing. And a lot of focus has been on the league for all the right reasons, but we couldn't get a cup either. So a really dark season for us this year.
Aye, that's the stark thing. How quickly it's all turned around for that dominance. Those years of dominance where we looked so far ahead, to now looking so far behind. And I think to round up for me in terms of getting some sort of communication from the club, the thing that I would like to see, and we won't get it. I know we won't get it, but I would like to see them acknowledge the mistakes that they've made. Acknowledge the mistakes they've made in all of the areas that we've talked about here. I don't want to hear. I don't want to see any accounts on Twitter that might be related to the club or might not be related to the club constantly tell us how well everything has been done at the club in the past 10 years, 20 years, and talk about what has been done and just dine out on it. I want the club to acknowledge how they've mismanaged this. I want them to tell us that they're going to improve how recruitment's done. They're going to improve the structure and how it functions. I want there to be that acknowledgement that they need to make improvements in all of the areas, because we can't just bury our heads in the sand and just keep doing things the way we've done them. It needs to change, and we need to have clear communication from the club that is going to happen. That'll do us for today. Like the video, comment with your own thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you shortly for Twitter reactions as well. Cheers.